Hello, here we are. We're going to get going with Isaiah chapter 9. And we remember that Isaiah is a principal prophet who was preaching in the days of the kings. And he was warning Jerusalem about the repercussion if they did not stay with their God. So here we go, Isaiah 9. Nevertheless, there will be no more gloom for those who are in distress. In the past, he humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, but in the future, he will honor Galilee of the nations by the way of the sea beyond the Jordan. And how is he going to honor Galilee? With Jesus Christ. He was a man from Galilee. The people walking in darkness, and this is wonderful, Jesus Christ read this, and when we get to the New Testament, we'll read about him reading this scripture here. And after he puts it down, after he puts the scroll down, he says, today this scripture has been fulfilled within your hearing. So let's read it. Isaiah 9:2. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. And then Jesus put the scroll down and said, this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing today, meaning himself. He is that great light. You have enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, as warriors rejoice when dividing the plunder. For as in the day of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born. To us a son is given. Once again, it's hard to understand how the Jews could miss these prophecies. There are 330 of them in the Old Testament of Jesus Christ. But we remember that the Jews are temporarily blinded to Jesus so that the Gentiles can get in. And when the last Gentile is in and the door is shut, the Jews' eyes will be opened. And the Revelation says they'll be tearing their beards when they realize that Jesus was God and they asked for his death. They didn't put him to death. We all put him to death. Okay, our sin put him to death. He died specifically for each one of us and for our sin. He wasn't a victim of the Jews crying for his death. That was just how the story unfolded. He was nobody's victim. He was not a martyr. Okay, he died for each one of us. That's just the story and how it unfolded. The Romans are the ones that executed him. All right. You know, everybody makes terrible mistakes, okay? The Jews are going to realize what they've done at the end when their eyes are opened. All right, here we go. I'm going to start again with verse 6. For to us a child is born. Just think about Isaiah standing outside preaching this. To us a son is given. People were probably going, what? What is he talking about? And the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. That makes me want to cry. Of the greatness of his government and peace, there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. Now, the people hearing who had no discernment or couldn't imagine what this could be must have thought he was talking about an earthly great king that was coming. And he was an earthly great king that was coming, but not an earthly king, a heavenly one. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. The Lord has sent a message against Jacob. It will fall on Israel. All the people will know it. Ephraim And the inhabitants of Samaria who say with pride and arrogance of heart, the bricks have fallen down, but we'll rebuild with dressed stone. In other words, we'll build it better. The fig trees have been felled, but we'll replace them with cedars. See, man always thinks he's going to do it in his own strength and do it better than God can do. But the Lord has strengthened Rezin's foes against them and has spurred their enemies on. Arameans from the east and Philistines from the west have devoured Israel with open mouth. So we've pretty much heard about these battles in Kings and in Chronicles, but now we're hearing the prophecies that were going along with this stuff from Isaiah, okay? And I believe he was even mentioned somewhere in either Kings or Chronicles, just in passing. So now we're hearing his prophecies. Yet for all this, his anger is not turned away. His hand is still upraised. In other words, they're going to get conquered, but the Lord's still angry. But the people have not returned to him who struck them, nor have they sought the Lord Almighty. So the Lord will cut off from Israel both head and tail, both palm branch and reed in a single day. The elders and dignitaries are the head. The prophets who teach lies are the tail. False prophets. Those who guide this people mislead them, and those who are guided are led astray. Can you imagine how much Isaiah must have really irritated people listening to this? Those that are getting convicted by his words. Therefore, the Lord will take no pleasure in the young men, nor will he pity the fatherless and the widows. For everyone is ungodly and wicked. Every mouth speaks folly. Yet for all this, his anger is not turned away. His hand is still upraised. Surely wickedness burns like a fire. It consumes briars and thorns. It sets the forest thickets ablaze, so that it rolls upward in a column of smoke. By the wrath of the Lord Almighty, the land will be scorched. Talk about scorched earth. Here it is. And the people will be fuel for the fire. New Testament said that people are going to be logs to fuel the fires of hell. Terrible. They will not spare one another. On the right they will devour, but still be hungry. On the left they will eat, but not be satisfied. Each will feed on the flesh of their own offspring. Manasseh will feed on Ephraim, and Ephraim on Manasseh. Together they'll turn against Judah. Yet for all this, his anger is not turned away. His hand is still upraised. So the Lord's not being appeased here. So let's do chapter 10. Woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees, to deprive the poor of their rights and withhold justice from the oppressed of my people, making widows their prey and robbing the fatherless. What will you do on the day of reckoning when disaster comes from afar? To whom will you run to for help? Where will you leave your riches? Nothing will remain but to cringe among the captives or fall among the slain. So you'll either be captured and cringing in fear, or you'll be dead with the rest of the slain. Yet for all this, his anger is not turned away. His hand is still upraised. Woe to the Assyrian, the rod of my anger, in whose hand is the club of my wrath. So he's going to use the Assyrians like a club. I send him against a godless nation. I dispatch him against a people who anger me, to seize loot and snatch plunder and to trample them down like mud in the streets. But this is not what he intends. This is not what he has in mind. His purpose is to destroy, to put an end to many nations. Are not my commanders all kings, he says? Has not Calno fared like Carchemish? That's an important name, but I can't think how just yet. Is not Hamath like Arpad and Samaria like Damascus? as my hand seized the kingdoms of the idols, kingdoms whose images excelled those of Jerusalem and Samaria, shall I not deal with Jerusalem and her images as I dealt with Samaria and her idols? So he's saying they have better idols than my people. And I smashed them, so I'm certainly going to smash my people's idols. When the Lord has finished all his work against Mount Zion and Jerusalem, he'll say, I'll punish the king of Assyria for the willful pride of his heart and the haughty look in his eyes. For he says, by the strength of my hand, I've done this. He's saying, I used you, Assyria, and now I'm going to punish you. Boy, it's fearful to fall into the hands of the living God. And by my wisdom, because I have understanding, I removed the boundaries of nations. I plundered their treasures. Like a mighty one, I subdued their king. So he's saying, it was me. I used you. It was me through you, Assyria. As one reaches into a nest, so my hand reached for the wealth of the nations. As people gather abandoned eggs, so I gathered all the countries. Not one flapped a wing or opened its mouth to chirp. Does the axe raise itself above the person who swings it, or the saw boast against the one who uses it? As if a rod were to wield the person who lifts it up. In other words, the rod's not wielding the person is wielding the rod. Or a club brandish the one who's not wood? Therefore, the Lord Almighty, will send a wasting disease upon his sturdy warriors. Under his pomp, a fire will be kindled like a blazing flame. The light of Israel will become a fire, their Holy One a flame. In a single day, it will burn and consume his thorns and his briars, the splendor of his forests and fertile fields it will completely destroy, as when a sick person wastes away, and the remaining trees of his forests will be so few that a child could write them down. So I think what he's saying here, well, we get the point that everything's going to get destroyed when he's angry, but it sounds to me when he says here, the light of Israel will become a fire. Oh, okay, the Holy One of Flame. So he's talking about himself. In a single day, it will burn and consume his thorns and his briars, the splendor of his forests. In that day, the remnant of Israel, okay, the few that are faithful, the survivors of Jacob will no longer rely on him who struck them down, but will truly rely on the Lord. So they're not going to rely on Assyria to, who's crushed them. They're going to rely on the Lord, the Holy One of Israel. A remnant will return. A remnant of Jacob will return to the mighty God. Now, Revelation says 144,000 Jews have been set aside for that day, and they're going to serve the Lord in a big way. They are saved. I believe they're virginal men. Okay, anyway. A remnant will return, a remnant of Jacob will return to the mighty God. Though your people be like the sand by the sea, Israel, only a remnant will return. Destruction has been decreed, overwhelming and righteous. The Lord Almighty, will carry out the destruction decreed upon the whole land. Now, this, of course, is most likely talking about the remnant that was left when Babylon took Israel into captivity, and that would be Judah and Jerusalem, the two factions that made up Israel. Therefore, this is what the Lord Almighty says. My people who live in Zion, don't be afraid of the Assyrians who beat you with a rod and lift up a club against you as Egypt did. Very soon my anger against you will end, and my wrath will be directed to their destruction. The Lord Almighty will lash them with a whip as when he struck down Midian at the rock of Oreb, and he'll raise his staff over the waters as he did in Egypt. In that day, their burden will be lifted from your shoulders, their yoke from your neck. The yoke will be broken because you've grown so fat. They enter Elath, they pass through Migron, they store supplies at Michmash. They go over the pass and say, we'll camp overnight at Geba. Ramah trembles, Gibeah of Saul flees. Cry out, daughter Galim. Listen, Lasha. Poor Anatoth. Madmenah is in flight. The people of Gebim take cover. This day they will halt at Nob, N-O-B. They will shake their fist at the mount of daughter Zion, at the hill of Jerusalem. See, the Lord Almighty will lop off the boughs with great power. The lofty trees will be felled. The tall ones will be brought low. He will cut down the forest thickets with an axe. Lebanon will fall before the mighty one. So these are prophecies about wars and punishments, etc., etc. So let's just listen to the beautiful wording and let it wash over us. Now we'll do the last one for tonight, which is Isaiah 11. A shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. From his roots, a branch, in capital letters, branch, will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him. I think we're talking about Jesus again. Yet another prophecy of Jesus Christ. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and of understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of the knowledge and fear of the Lord, and he'll delight in the fear of the Lord. He will not judge by what he sees with his eyes or decide by what he hears with his ears, but with righteousness he'll judge the needy. With justice he'll give decisions for the poor of the earth. He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. With the breath of his lips he'll slay the wicked. And that happens. You just speak the word to some wicked people and they just leave you alone immediately. Righteousness will be his belt and faithfulness the sash around his waist. The wolf will live with the lamb. The leopard will lie down with the goat. The calf and the lion and the yearling together, and a little child will lead them. Remember, Jesus started as a little child. The cow will feed with the bear. Their young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw with the ox. The infant will play near the cobra's den, and the young child will put its hand into the viper's nest. They'll neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. I think this is yet to come. I think this is yet to come, folks. In that day, the root of Jesse will stand as a banner for the peoples. And Jesus really is. And his banner over us is love. Remember it said that in the Song of Solomon? The nations will rally to him, and his resting place will be glorious. In that day, the Lord will reach out his hand a second time to reclaim the surviving remnant of his people from Assyria, from Lower Egypt, from Upper Egypt, from Cush, from Elam, from Babylonia, from Hamath, and from the islands of the Mediterranean. He will raise a banner for the nations and gather the exiles of Israel. We've seen that happen. And Israel became a nation again. They were called from all over the world. And here we have 2,000 years or 4,000 years ago, Isaiah is prophesying this. He will assemble the scattered people of Judah from the four quarters of the earth. Ephraim's jealousy will vanish and Judah's enemies will be destroyed. Ephraim will not be jealous of Judah, nor Judah hostile towards Ephraim. They'll swoop down on the slopes of Philistia to the west. Together they'll plunder the people to the east. They will subdue Edom and Moab. You remember Edom was Esau's line. They hated the Israelites. And Moab was Lot's line from one of his daughters who slept with him when he was drunk and passed out. So it says they will subdue Edom and Moab, and the Ammonites will be subject to them. The Lord will dry up the gulf of the Egyptian sea with a scorching wind. He'll sweep his hand over the Euphrates River. He'll break it up into 7 streams so that anyone can cross over in sandals. There will be a highway for the remnant of his people that is left from Assyria, as there was for Israel when they came up from Egypt. So Israel's going to be rescued by hook or by crook, whether we're talking about back then or in the future. I love you very much. I know parts of this book are a little hard to put into context, but just listen, okay? I love you, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.